Greetings, twisted minds and curious of the grotesque. My name is Alistair Bancroft, and I have been tasked once again with the most appetizing task of reading for you yet another fleshy, tantalizing snack from Twisted Reality. Stark Raven Rant Creations presents the eccentric adventures of a handsome silver chronicler of worlds and creator extraordinaire's existential crisis and ink stained slip into manatees and ugly monkey tale. Written in 2024 by B. K. Swain, and here we go. The dimension writhed and undulated like a living nightmare, shifting violently from sepia to black and white, the glitches turning everything grotesque and surreal. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the ground beneath his feet felt like the squirming bodies of unseen horrors. His sexy silver hair, matted with sweat and grime, clung to his ruggedly handsome face that was painted with a perfectly placed stroke of blood that for some reason he had not yet wiped off, even though there were many opportunities to do so. As he stumbled through the malevolent landscape, his eyes wide with terror and madness. Ugly monkey, his voice a guttural roar that echoed through the Twisted Reality. Show yourself, you coward. Is this how you repay your incredibly talented creator? The oppressive silence swallowed his words, only to be answered by a loud primal scream of guilty, followed by a maniacal laughter that sent shivers down his spine. The sound, inhuman and rasping, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He spun around, searching for the source, but found only the shifting, glitching forms of grotesque humanoid creatures. Their flesh, mottled and decayed, their eyes empty sockets that seemed to pierce his soul. Guilty, they whispered, their voices a chorus of damnation. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The creatures moved with jerky, unnatural motions, like marionettes controlled by a sadistic puppeteer. They whispered and gibbered, sometimes turning on each other in fits of violent rage, tearing at each other's flesh with clawed hands and gnashing teeth. The air filled with the sound of ripping flesh and tortured screams. A massive mirror appeared before him, its surface a pristine void amidst the chaos. His reflection, a broken man with silver hair and haunted eyes, stood in a world gone mad. With a snarl, he pulled a marker from his pocket and began scrawling words of despair and fury on the glass. Despair, he wrote, the letters jagged and frantic. Anger. Fear. Hope. Each word a desperate plea, a cry for salvation in a world that offered none. He also added eggs, milk, coffee, and toilet paper, as he didn't want to forget what he needed as it came to his mind. The creatures whispered and hissed around him, their voices a relentless spewing of guilt and condemnation. Guilty, they whispered. Guilty. With a roar of rage, he slammed his fists against the mirror, the impact sending shockwaves of pain up his arms. Blood smeared across the glass, mingling with his frantic scrawls. The mirror remained unyielding, a cold, indifferent witness to his suffering. Answer me, his voice cracking. Why do you torment me? I gave you life. I gave you form. And this is how you repay me. As a humble man of incredible musical, movie and television tastes as well as narrative prowess, the world needs me, you ungrateful monster. The world around him glitched violently, the sepia tones bleeding into stark black and white, the entire dimension throbbing with a malevolent energy. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as the creatures closed in, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. Help me. A barely audible whisper. Someone, please, help me. No help came, only the relentless onslaught of the grotesque humanoids. They clawed at him, their fingers like icy talons, their whispers a constant litany of guilt and condemnation. He fought back, swinging his fist wildly, but there were too many. Their numbers overwhelming. The maniacal laughter returned, louder and more sinister, echoing through the swampy morass of his mind. Guilty! It roared, the word reverberating through the twisted landscape. Guilty! The dashing, silver-haired writer's screams of agony and madness were swallowed by the nightmarish world, his desperate cries lost in the darkness. But as reality's angle panned through the giant looking glass, Dr. E.M. Looney observed the man through the one-way mirror, his expression a mask of professional detachment. Beside him, Nurse Pisces jotted down notes, her pen moving swiftly across the paper. She glanced up, her eyes lingering on the man in the padded cell, admiration and sorrow evident in her gaze. "He's getting worse," she said softly, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. She glanced at the doctor, but her eyes kept drifting back to the handsome, silver-haired man who sat huddled on the floor, his fists bloody and his eyes vacant. The delusions are more intense. Dr. Looney nodded, his gaze fixed on the writer. "He truly believes he's trapped in some kind of alternate dimension," he murmured. Nurse Pisces sighed, a deep sadness in her voice. "It's tragic. Such a brilliant mind, lost in his own creation. She admired his incredible talent as a writer and thinker, his deep philosophical insights that had once captivated audiences. Now, those same gifts seemed to be his tormentors." The doctor folded his arms, his expression thoughtful. "We need to find a way to reach him, to pull him out of this nightmare." Nurse Pisces hesitated, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Have you considered kissing therapy?" She looked almost embarrassed at the suggestion, yet her eyes shone with hope. Dr. Looney blinked, then frowned. "There's no such thing as kissing therapy, Nurse Pisces." She mumbled under her breath, almost inaudible. "Wouldn't hurt to try." They watched as the man began to whisper to himself, his words a jumble of fear and despair, hope and anger. The mirror between them was unbreakable, just like the walls of the dimension he believed he was lost in. Nurse Pisces couldn't tear her eyes away from him. She saw the traces of the man he had been, a paragon of masculine perfection, wise beyond his years, with silver hair that only added to his distinguished look. She longed to reach out, to bridge the gap between reality and his tortured mind, to save the man who had once been so vibrant and full of life. As Dr. I.M. Looney and Nurse Alana Pisces stood in silent vigil, the handsome, incredibly talented, and obviously cool silver-haired writers. Cries for help echoed through the sterile halls of the psychiatric ward, a haunting reminder of the thin line between genius and madness, and whether zero is a number or merely the complete absence of all numbers.